This weekend, Hamas started a war against Israel with the worst massacre of innocent civilians in Israel's history. This horrific terror act demands a forceful, determined, and sustained response, which is exactly what we are doing and continue to do.
And that they did. Fighter jets, Apache helicopters calling upon 300,000 reservists across the globe, all being sent in a full siege retaliation, warning 1 million Gaza civilians to evacuate their homes. In the face of civil and political unrest, what was the goal of Hamas? They knew once they started this war, it was already over. A full-scale retaliation from Israel was inevitable, and they stood no chance. There has to be a deeper motive, and that's what we're here to find out. But how the hell did we get here? Well, here's a 90-second summary. Buckle up, this is a lot of info in not a lot of time. Palestine is an extremely sacred location in both Muslim and Jewish scripture. Muslims think they own the land, Jews think they own the land. And apparently, two groups of people who have different beliefs cannot share the same piece of land. This dynamic has existed since the biblical era. In modern history, Palestine's borders have become blurry, and that's because it depends on what side you ask. In summary, the United Nations wanted to resolve this issue and came up with the two-state solution, essentially splitting up the Muslims and the Jews to their own respective parts of Palestine. As you can imagine, this lasted all of 1 year. The two parties waged war, and the Jews arose victorious, forcing many of the remaining Arab population out of the area. This led to the formal creation of Israel in 1948. Remember, this is just 3 years after the end of the Holocaust and World War II, so the Jews received sympathy from international powers and reparations from Germany. Over the following years, Israel, predominantly Jewish, and surrounding Arab nations like Jordan, Syria, and Egypt, predominantly Muslim, continued their hostility. All these developments lead us to today. Hamas, a Palestinian Islamist terrorist group, fired over 5,000 rockets, all landing in southern and central Israel, killing hundreds to thousands. Cool summary. I know we can all read and watch the news, so let's not waste any more time. Let's get into why this should have never happened in the first place. First off, how in the world did Hamas, a tiny Palestinian organization governing the Gaza Strip, pull off a surprise, let alone a coordinated attack on the scale that they did? The Mossad, Israel's national intelligence service, is thought to be one of the most feared organizations on planet Earth. Their job being to protect Israeli interests from terrorism and other complex threats, which by definition is what's going on today. Based on their geographical complexities, I'm sure you can imagine just how good these guys got in a very short amount of time. It wasn't an option, it was a necessity. Israel is a tiny state sandwiched by enemies on every side, so advanced military and intelligence capabilities are a non-negotiable. And you know what? It gets even better. The Mossad has and still does enjoy support from the CIA, the United States Foreign Intelligence Agency, receiving equipment, intelligence, and operational support from its inception. All this is cool, but just how good are they? Well, just wait for this. The Mossad tracked, kidnapped, and eventually executed Adolf Eichmann in 1960, a linchpin in the organization of the Holocaust. Herbert Kukers in 1965, responsible for the murder of 30,000 Latvian Jews. They assassinated supergun designer Gerald Bull, members of Black September, and the head of nuclear weapon development in Iran. Most impressively of all is their ability to develop human intelligence sources within foreign militaries and governments. Mossad agents have infiltrated the highest echelons of Syrian and Iranian society, providing critical military and weapon development details back to Israel. The proof is in the pudding. This agency is scary good. So let's recap two of the world's strongest and most feared intelligence operations teaming up to protect Israel. Yet a coordinated, complex Hamas attack snuck right under their nose. There's gotta be something we are missing. Maybe Hamas has superior technology? After all, according to Israel, Hamas receives somewhere around $100 million per year from Iran in the form of funding, weapons, tech. You thought I was serious? Let's put this one to bed quickly. Hamas in their assault used remotely controlled rockets and drones, grenades, and IEDs to chip away at Israeli outposts, armored vehicles, and motorized paragliders to soar over border control. I mean, let's just call a spade a spade. This was not a matter of more advanced technology and weaponry. In fact, it was just the opposite. The Israeli military ranks 18th in the world's mightiest armed forces according to the 2023 Global Firepower Index, sporting an annual military budget of $23.6 billion in 2023. We already talked about how Israel and the United States have been pretty good buddies since the end of World War II, so we shouldn't be surprised that the US provides $3 billion a year in military aid to Israel, and they have been the largest cumulative recipient of United States foreign assistance since then. An extremely small nation of just 9.2 million people, for perspective about the same size as the Chicago metropolitan area today, the third largest metro area in the United States. And despite its size, has become one of the most technologically advanced nations on the entire planet, ranking 7th on Bloomberg's Global Innovation Index. So I think we can all confidently say that this is not a matter of lacking technology. Israel is no joke. Their Iron Dome has been their guardian angel for past missile attacks, albeit much smaller than the 5,000 rocket assault by Hamas. The Israel Defense Forces said the system had a 95.6% success rate during a rocket attack in May 2023. The reliable system is made up of a radar that identifies an incoming rocket within 2.5 to 43 miles away and sends information regarding the rocket's path to the control center. The control center then calculates the location of impact and predicts whether the rocket is going to strike inhabited areas or wasteland. The control system connects to a launcher that fires a Tamir missile to destroy the rocket if an interception is justified. Despite their relatively small size, these interceptor missiles certainly aren't cheap. Each Iron Dome system costs about $15 million, and each missile launched costs about $40,000. But I'm sure cost is the last thing on the minds of Israeli defense forces right now. Plus, it's important to note that this technology was made possible by a strategic partnership with Raytheon, a major defense contractor out of the United States. The US has spent over $1.5 billion on the Iron Dome program, and has made it very clear over the days following the Hamas attack that they are willing to provide all necessary support to Israel. So Hamas certainly shouldn't expect the interceptor missile supply to stop anytime soon. So that begs the question, what's their plan? It seems kinda silly to launch a full-scale invasion on a country with far superior defensive technology, as well as their ridiculously large advantage when it comes to offensive and retaliatory technology in the form of the most advanced fighter jets in the world, and one of the strongest assault helicopters, all backed by virtually limitless ammunition and financing provided by the United States. Hamas has to know this. They know they are severely outclassed when it comes to capability and cost of their technology, so their plan is clear, right? By sending missile strikes in large quantities, their objective is to overwhelm the complex Iron Dome systems with simultaneous missile strikes. You see, as we talked about earlier, the Iron Dome Control Center targets rockets that pose the greatest threat to urban areas and infrastructure. When dealing with simultaneous threats, it must choose between the targets. The Iron Dome system is made up of 3 to 4 launchers and can't take out hundreds of Hamas rockets at the same time. And Hamas is able to shoot over thousands of missiles simply because they are cheap, but effective in this case. Each homemade missile that Hamas fires is about 100 times less the cost of each interceptor missile fired by the Iron Dome. Therefore, although not all of Hamas's rockets will hit their desired targets, they frankly don't care, as some are practically guaranteed due to the precise and expensive nature of the Iron Dome. Also, most of these Qassam rockets are simply used as shields for their more powerful ones, namely the Russian Grad. The Qassam rockets are cheap and ineffective by nature, by design, whereas the Russian missiles are more accurate and cause significantly more damage, but are easier to locate by the Iron Dome systems. Again, by sending a barrage, you increase the chance that a large missile like the Russian Grad stays under the radar and hits its target. On top of the missile barrage, Hamas sent in hundreds of unmanned drones to drop explosives on border intelligence and communication towers along the border of the Gaza Strip. This allowed Hamas to carry out the next phase of the operation, blinding the Israeli border intelligence, to allow the unexpected Hamas coordination to continue and hopefully overwhelm Israeli forces. Videos of these drones dropping small explosive devices on tanks and communication towers display just how unsuspecting the Israeli forces were. Again, these drones were cheap, yet flew under the radar. They were able to stay close to the ground and avoid detection by Iron Dome systems, and therefore infiltrate deeper into Israeli territory than ever thought possible. With communication towers knocked knocked out, the rest was simple. Hamas freely sent in soldiers on bikes, paragliders, and trucks, took hostages, and shot at unsuspecting Israeli citizens while they party in the desert. Real classy. However, we still haven't answered the question, what is Hamas's end goal? Sure, they have done an incredible and unfathomable amount of damage to a far more powerful adversary, and the idea that this was even a remote possibility against a supposedly prepared Israeli force will be an enigma for years to come. But now with Israel on the offensive, everybody knows that Hamas stands no chance. So there has to be a deeper motive. At this point, they have likely exhausted their stocks of rockets and kamikaze drones and will not be able to carry out a sustained campaign. And as you could imagine, Israel isn't exactly taking this offensive lightly. Israeli Prime Minister said, "We have always known who Hamas is. Now the entire world knows. Hamas is ISIS, and we will defeat it just like the enlightened world defeated ISIS. This vile enemy wanted war, and it will get war." Israeli Defense Minister added, "There will be no electricity, no food, no water, no fuel. Everything will be closed. We're fighting against human animals and we're acting accordingly." So we shouldn't be surprised, and frankly Hamas shouldn't be either, that this full-scale siege by Israel on the Gaza Strip will be devastating. With Israel now implementing their full arsenal of next-generation fighter jets, Apache helicopters, precision explosives, and calling upon their 300,000 army reserves likely for a ground assault, I'm not sure anybody expects a different outcome other than complete decimation. So like we said, it couldn't have been this simple. There has to be a deeper motive behind the Hamas's invasion. After all, it's clear that Hamas has been known in the past for their harassment style of attacks. Missile barrages here and there, but never on a large, coordinated scale like this one. Maybe they are simply trying to send a message, as the timing of this attack is far too significant to be any sort of coincidence. This 2023 attack coincides almost exactly with the 50th anniversary of the Yom Kippur or Ramadan War. For context, the Yom Kippur War was a bloody battle, which also happened to be another historically bad intelligence failure on the Israeli front. However, it ultimately resulted in a victory for Israel. The Yom Kippur invasion was also a surprise attack by Arab forces in Syria and Egypt with the intention of regaining territory. There are definitely similarities between the two events, but even in the darkest days of the Yom Kippur War, the Egyptian and Syrian armies never pierced the defensive ring around the country maintained by the Israeli Defense Forces. And Hamas did it in under 24 hours. Even in this case, sending a message that they are never willing to back down and cause significant damage despite their technological deficit, it was always a guarantee that this would result in a loss and an outsized number of Gaza and Hamas casualties. And I think we're starting to get to those deeper motives at play. Truth be told, they really don't care about the consequences. As told in Hamas's covenant, Israel will exist and will continue to exist until Islam will obliterate it. There is no solution for the Palestinian question except through jihad. Initiatives, proposals, and international conferences are all a waste of time and vain endeavors. It is a jihad of victory or martyrdom. Basically, this passage is saying, look, there's no way this war will end until we get back what's ours. We don't care if we die. We don't care how many of us die. We are all martyrs until we claim victory. So maybe this is the case. Maybe Hamas doesn't care if they die as long as they fall in line with their covenant, right? As long as they keep taking steps to get there. I think we can go deeper than this. Remember, at this point, it's clear that Hamas is no match for a nuclear power in Israel, and Hamas knows this. They also know that Israel is fully supported by other world powerhouses like Canada, the UK, Australia, France, Poland, and the United States, obviously. Garnering diplomatic support in the favor of Arab control over Israel on an international scale seems extremely unlikely at best. But what if the plan all along is to continue breeding anti-Israel support in Gaza and other nations? After all, though Hamas is largely concentrated in the Gaza Strip, this is a population of over 2 million people. It is estimated that Hamas may have about 10,000 fighters, but this can jump significantly to 40 or 50,000 as other Palestinians become mobilized in the face of Israel's relentless retaliation. It has been said by many CIA agents and Department of Defense representatives that fighting terrorism is like fighting a hydra, except take out one head, 5 more take its place. Counterattacks like the one that Israel is carrying out right now can really go one of 2 ways, or a third if things get really ugly. First scenario, Hamas has awoke the sleeping giant, and Israel goes to great heights to ensure most, if not all, of Hamas is eliminated. The dynamic has changed. In the past, Hamas was always just looked at as a nuisance or a pest. Think about it like Hamas would slap Israel across the face with a few rocket barrages here and there, and Israel would return the favor with a punch back. Something a little more powerful, a little more decisive to hopefully deter future Hamas attacks. However, this time it looks like Hamas landed a sucker punch, and Israel is dead set on ending this thing for good. Scenario 2, Hamas survives and is able to rally other people, whether that be locals or other neighboring Arab nations, to join in on their fight in the face of ensuing violence and relentless retaliation. Like we said, you may have stopped the attacks for now, but their influence is only growing stronger. In scenario 3, the doomsday scenario, nuclear warfare. Israel is a nuclear power and they have the capability to do so, and things would get pretty messy on an international scale if this were to escalate. It's not worth speculating because that would be devastating. Either way, no matter what scenario you look at, this should have never happened in the first place. There never should have been a war, there never should have been an invasion of this magnitude, and thousands, potentially tens of thousands of lives by the end of it should have been saved. Let me explain why in one word, a word that is so well known to the business world, the sports world, the military, any industry for that matter. Complacency. Success breeds complacency, complacency breeds failure, and only the paranoid survive. Despite boasting 2 of the world's strongest intelligence agencies, the most advanced military technology, and international superpowers on your side, your neighbors, a group notorious for violence against your country, repeated offenders over and over again throughout history, were able to execute a coordinated attack on this scale on your country. Absolute insanity. And sure, did Hamas get help? Of course they did. Hamas said it themselves, the assault, the planning, the coordination, the equipment, the execution, all thanks to Iran's support. And frankly, this was a point of pride for Iran when talking to various news outlets. The Atlantic said it best: for Hamas and Iran, yesterday's violence was a demonstration of newfound power. Members of Iran's government were seen chanting death to Israel in the capital, Tehran. Hamas went on to threaten Arab countries like the UAE and Saudi Arabia who have been considering peace agreements with Israel. It's all falling right into plan for Iran. Cut off one head and 5 more grow back in its place. Coulda, shoulda, woulda, it's over with now. There's nothing to do but look to the future and hope that this war doesn't end in too many innocent casualties. But with Israel deeming the Hamas attack as their 9/11 moment, I think a full-scale siege on the Gaza Strip, one of the most densely populated places on the entire planet, with more than 2 million people, mass civilian casualty, is inevitable. Sufficient preventative intelligence measures were not taken, and now we just sit and watch the bloody war unfold. The first casualty of war is innocence. Don't be so eager to find this out. War is ugly. Send your thoughts and prayers to those caught in the crossfire, and stay safe out there. I'll see you in the next one. Peace!